You've probably felt the sting of rejection before. Maybe someone dismissed your ideas at work, ignored your messages, or made you feel invisible at a social gathering. But here's something fascinating. Have you ever wondered why they suddenly want your attention the moment you stop pursuing them? Science shows that pulling back your approval can actually make others chase you. It triggers our urge to want what's out of reach. Think of wanting a phone you can't afford and suddenly craving it more. This isn't manipulation. It's understanding human psychology and using it to protect your energy while building genuine attraction. Today we're exploring 13 strategies that transform rejection into personal power. These aren't just theories. They're practical techniques that shift the entire dynamic from you chasing to you choosing. The mirror effect strategy. The first strategy transforms you from someone who chases to someone who gets chased. It's called emotional mirroring, and it works because humans are wired to want what mirrors their own energy back to them. When someone gives you minimal effort, you give minimal effort back. When they show lukewarm interest, you match that exact temperature. When they take 3 days to respond to your message, you take 3 days too. This isn't playing games. This is psychological equilibrium. Here's what happens when someone mirrors your behavior. Mirroring effort creates a subconscious signal that equates your worth with theirs. Your brain interprets their matched energy as social proof that your behavior was appropriate, which makes you more invested in the interaction. The person who was casually dismissing you suddenly wonders why you're not trying harder to win their attention. When someone mirrors your rejection or indifference, your brain doesn't register it as empathy. Instead, it creates cognitive dissonance. You expected them to chase, to try harder, to prove their worth to you. When they don't, your brain starts working overtime to figure out why. This mental activity often translates into increased interest and attention toward the person who's mirroring you. The key difference between mirroring and being cold lies in your intention and emotional state. Being cold means you're reacting from hurt or anger. You're withdrawing to punish or protect yourself. Mirroring means you're calibrating to their vibe, not competing desperately. You're preserving your energy by matching their investment level. You're not angry or hurt. You're simply being efficient with your emotional resources. In workplace situations, here's how mirroring plays out. Sarah's colleague Mark consistently gave her short, delayed responses to emails. Instead of sending longer messages to compensate, she matched his style exactly. Brief responses, similar timing, same formality level. Within 2 weeks, Mark started asking if everything was okay and began putting real effort into their communications. The mirror effect made him aware of his own dismissive behavior. Romantic contexts offer another clear example. Someone you're dating becomes less responsive, takes longer between texts, seems less enthusiastic about making plans. Your instinct might be to try harder, to ask what's wrong, to offer more of yourself to reignite their interest. Mirroring means you match their energy instead. You become equally spaced out with responses, equally casual about making plans, equally lukewarm in your enthusiasm. This often snaps them back to attention because they suddenly notice the change in dynamic. Social situations provide endless opportunities for mirroring. The friend who always cancels last minute starts getting matched with your own last minute cancellations. The acquaintance who only reaches out when they need something receives the same transactional energy in return. The family member who gives you minimal effort in conversations gets minimal effort back. In each case, the mirroring creates awareness of the relationship's actual balance. The line between healthy mirroring and manipulation becomes clear when you examine your motivations. Healthy mirroring protects your energy and creates fair exchanges. You're not trying to punish or control the other person. You're simply refusing to overinvest in relationships where your energy isn't matched. Manipulation would involve deliberately creating artificial scarcity or playing games to make someone chase you. The difference is authenticity versus strategy. As Aurelius taught, match others calmly, but don't overextend your energy. This Stoic principle applies perfectly to modern interactions. When you mirror someone's level of investment, you're practicing the ancient wisdom of not giving more than you receive, while remaining open to genuine connection. Mirroring creates space for authentic connections to develop naturally, because it removes the pressure and imbalance that kills attraction. When both people invest equally, neither feels overwhelmed or underwhelmed. The person who was taking you for granted suddenly has room to choose to step up their investment. The person who felt pressured by your overinvestment can now breathe and decide if they actually want to connect with you. Language patterns that demonstrate mirroring include matching their response length, formality level, and enthusiasm. If they text, "Okay, cool," you respond with "sounds good," instead of a paragraph explaining your thoughts. If they use casual language, you use casual language. If they share minimal details about their day, you share minimal details too. If they use lots of exclamation points and emojis, you can match that energy. If they're more reserved, you become more reserved. Behavioral adjustments involve matching their pace and investment level across all areas of interaction. Their response time becomes your response time. Their level of effort in making plans becomes your level of effort. Their enthusiasm for seeing you becomes your enthusiasm for seeing them. Their willingness to compromise becomes your willingness to compromise. Their level of emotional openness becomes your level of emotional openness. The physical aspects of mirroring extend to body language and presence. If someone gives you partial attention during conversations, checking their phone or looking around the room, you can mirror that divided attention back to them. If they maintain strong eye contact and engaged posture, you match that level of presence. If they seem distracted during your time together, you allow yourself to be equally distracted. What makes mirroring so powerful is that it forces people to confront their own behavior patterns. Most people don't realize how they treat others until that same treatment gets reflected back to them. The colleague who gives minimal effort suddenly notices when you do the same. The romantic interest who was taking you for granted suddenly feels what it's like to be taken for granted. This awareness often leads to immediate behavior changes. The transformation from chaser to chooser happens because mirroring shifts the entire power dynamic of your relationships. Instead of constantly trying to earn someone's attention or approval, you become someone whose attention and approval has value. Instead of being the person who always invests more, you become the person who invests appropriately. This shift changes how people perceive and treat you across every area of your life. But mirroring is just the beginning. There's something even more powerful that happens when you take this principle one step further. Strategic emotional detachment. Strategic emotional detachment creates a shift that most people find counterintuitive. The less you care about someone's rejection, the more they start caring about getting your attention back. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's basic human psychology. When you stop being emotionally invested in their opinion, you become scarce. When you don't plead for approval, your absence makes people curious. Think about how this plays out in real life. You meet someone who seems unimpressed by your achievements, your humor, or your presence. Your natural reaction is to try harder. You share more stories, laugh louder at their jokes, make yourself more available. But what happens when you do the opposite? When you pull back your emotional investment and treat their rejection as irrelevant information, they start wondering why you're not trying to win them over anymore. The psychology behind this phenomenon connects to scarcity principles that marketers have used for decades. When something becomes less available, our brains assign it higher value. The same mechanism works with human attention and approval. When you stop seeking someone's validation, your validation becomes more valuable. When you stop being emotionally available to them, your emotional availability becomes something they want to earn. Healthy detachment protects your peace. Punishment-based withdrawal only breeds resentment. Healthy detachment means you're not emotionally dependent on their response to you. You can interact normally, be kind, maintain professionalism, but their opinion doesn't affect your mood or self-worth. You preserve your energy while keeping yourself open to genuine connection. Marcus Aurelius understood this balance better than most. He taught that we should focus only on what we can control, which is our thoughts, actions, and reactions. Everything else, including other people's opinions and behaviors, falls outside our control. When someone rejects you, Aurelius would say you have two choices. You can let their rejection disturb your inner peace, or you can accept it as information that doesn't define your worth. The second choice creates emotional freedom. His approach to rejection was purely practical. If someone doesn't want to be around you, why would you want to be around them? If someone doesn't value your presence, why would you value theirs? This isn't bitterness or revenge. It's logical resource allocation. You have limited time and emotional energy. Investing it in people who don't reciprocate is poor decision-making. Keeping calm rather than clinging signals strength, not arrogance. People with secure attachment styles handle rejection better because they learned early in life that their worth isn't determined by others' responses. They can maintain emotional stability when faced with disapproval or dismissal. Understanding your attachment style helps you recognize your typical reaction patterns to rejection and develop healthier responses. The framework for maintaining emotional boundaries without becoming callous starts with internal work. You need to develop a strong sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation. This means knowing your values, recognizing your strengths, and accepting your flaws without needing others to approve of your conclusions. When your self-worth comes from internal sources, other people's rejection becomes less threatening and easier to handle with grace. Most people make several mistakes when trying to detach emotionally. The first mistake is performing detachment instead of genuinely developing it. They act disinterested while secretly hoping the other person will notice and change their behavior. Real detachment means you genuinely don't need their validation. The second mistake is becoming mean or cold in the name of detachment. True detachment allows you to remain kind and respectful while protecting your emotional investment. Another common error is inconsistent detachment. You pull back for a few days, then rush back in when they show the slightest interest. This creates an unpredictable dynamic that can actually increase their power over your emotions. Consistent detachment means maintaining your emotional boundaries regardless of how they respond. You don't punish them with coldness, but you also don't reward them with overinvestment. The mental clarity that comes from emotional detachment changes everything about how you handle relationships and opportunities. When you're not emotionally invested in someone's approval, you can see situations more objectively. You notice red flags you might have ignored when you were focused on winning them over. You recognize patterns in their behavior that reveal their character and intentions. You make better decisions because your judgment isn't clouded by the desperate need for their acceptance. This clarity extends to your own behavior patterns too. You start noticing when you're trying too hard, when you're compromising your values for someone's approval, or when you're giving more than you're receiving. You become aware of your own worth and stop accepting treatment that doesn't match it. You develop standards based on how you want to be treated rather than accepting whatever scraps of attention someone offers. The ripple effect of emotional stability shows up in every area of your social life. When you're not desperate for any particular person's approval, you become more attractive to everyone around you. Desperation repels people. Emotional stability attracts them. People want to be around those who seem comfortable in their own skin, who don't need constant reassurance, who can handle social situations without drama or neediness. Your overall presence changes when you're not emotionally dependent on others' responses. You speak with more confidence because you're not worried about saying the wrong thing. You listen better because you're not planning what to say next to impress them. You're more genuine because you're not performing for their approval. You take up appropriate space in conversations and social situations because you know you belong there. This transformation from emotional dependency to emotional stability creates a magnetic quality that draws people toward you. Strategic detachment signals self-sufficiency and inner strength. It shows that you have your own life, your own interests, your own sources of fulfillment. You're not looking for someone to complete you or validate your existence. You're a whole person who might enjoy their company, but doesn't need it to feel worthy. The magnetism comes from the fact that most people are emotionally needy to some degree. They're looking for validation, approval, or reassurance from others. When they encounter someone who doesn't need those things from them, it creates curiosity and often attraction. They wonder what makes you different. They want to figure out why you don't seem to need their approval like everyone else does. But detachment alone isn't enough. There's something more active you can do when someone starts pulling away from you that creates an even stronger effect. The redirect technique. When someone pulls away from you, your first instinct is to follow them. This reaction runs deeper than social conditioning. It's hardwired into your survival mechanisms. But what if the answer isn't to chase harder, but to redirect that energy somewhere else entirely? What if the very act of turning away creates more pull than any amount of pursuit ever could? Think about why we chase what moves away from us. A potential romantic partner starts responding less frequently to your messages. Your immediate thought is to send more messages, to try harder, to figure out what went wrong. A colleague begins excluding you from meetings or conversations. Your instinct is to work harder to get back into their good graces. A friend becomes distant and unavailable. You start reaching out more, suggesting plans, trying to bridge the gap they've created. This pursuit behavior comes from evolutionary psychology. Our ancestors survived by maintaining social bonds and avoiding abandonment by the group. Being rejected meant potential death in harsh environments. Your brain still carries these ancient programs. When someone withdraws, rather than texting endlessly, Channel that energy into a new hobby or skill. Understanding this disconnect gives you power over your automatic responses. You can recognize the urge to chase as an outdated survival mechanism rather than useful guidance for handling contemporary social situations. The redirect technique works by taking all that pursuit energy and channeling it toward your own growth and new opportunities. Instead of sending more texts to someone who's not responding, you redirect that energy into learning a new skill. Instead of trying harder to win over a colleague who's dismissive, you redirect the effort into building relationships with people who appreciate your contributions. Instead of chasing a friend who's pulling away, you redirect that social energy into expanding your circle with people who want to spend time with you. This redirection creates what psychologists call a vacuum effect. Think of how the candidate who stopped chasing the boss often ends up in demand. When you stop filling the space someone has vacated with your attention and energy, you create emptiness where your presence used to be. Nature abhors a vacuum. People notice when your energy is no longer focused on them. They start wondering why you're not trying to win them back. They begin to question whether they made a mistake in pulling away from you. The vacuum effect works because most people expect you to chase when they withdraw. They anticipate your pursuit, your attempts to win them back, your efforts to prove your worth. When you don't behave as expected, it creates cognitive dissonance. Their brain has to work harder to understand the situation. This mental effort often translates into increased attention and curiosity about what you're doing instead of focusing on them. The key is performing genuine actions that reflect personal priorities rather than publicity stunts. You're not doing new things to make them jealous. You're doing new things because you have energy to invest, and you're choosing to invest it wisely. You're not building new relationships to replace them. You're building new relationships because connecting with people who value you is more fulfilling than chasing people who don't. This distinction matters because people can sense the difference between authentic behavior and performance. Genuine redirection demonstrates emotional maturity and self-respect. It shows that you're capable of moving forward without being dependent on their attention or approval. The confidence that comes from genuine redirection is authentic because it's based on real experiences and actual growth. When you redirect your energy toward learning new skills, you become more competent. When you redirect your social energy toward people who appreciate you, you feel more valued and connected. When you redirect your attention toward your own goals and interests, you develop a stronger sense of purpose and identity. This authentic confidence is attractive to everyone around you, including the person who originally rejected you. Confidence based on genuine achievement and growth is magnetic. It draws people toward you because they want to be around someone who's actively improving their life and expanding their possibilities. Your social network naturally expands when you redirect energy toward new connections and opportunities. You meet people through new activities and interests. You strengthen existing relationships by investing more energy in them. You attract people who are drawn to your growth and positive energy. This expansion creates options and reduces your dependence on any single person's approval or attention. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should focus only on what we can control. When someone rejects you, you can't control their decision or their feelings. You can control where you direct your energy next. You can control what you do with the time you were spending on them. You can control whether you use their rejection as motivation for growth or as an excuse for stagnation. The Stoic approach to redirection involves accepting the rejection as information rather than taking it personally. Someone's decision to pull away tells you about their priorities, their capacity for connection, or their current life circumstances. It doesn't define your worth or potential. By focusing on what you can control, you maintain your power and agency in the situation. In professional scenarios, redirection might mean pursuing new projects when a colleague excludes you from theirs. Instead of trying to force your way back into their good graces, you create your own opportunities for success and recognition. You build relationships with other colleagues who value your contributions. You develop skills that make you indispensable in different areas. Personal relationships offer different redirection opportunities. When a friend becomes distant, you might redirect that friendship energy toward people who are more available and engaged. When a romantic interest pulls away, you redirect that emotional investment toward personal growth, new experiences, and meeting new people who might be better matches for you. The most powerful aspect of genuine redirection is that it often leads to better opportunities than what you were originally pursuing. The colleague who rejected your ideas might notice your success in other projects and want to collaborate. The friend who became distant might reach out when they see you thriving with new connections. The romantic interest who pulled away might realize what they lost when they see you flourishing without them. But even if they never come back, genuine redirection ensures you're better off than you were before. You've grown, learned, connected with new people, and created new opportunities. Their rejection becomes the catalyst that pushed you toward experiences and relationships that serve you better than the original situation ever could have. However, redirecting your energy is only half the equation. Once you've built genuine confidence and growth, value demonstration, you need to know how to let others see your worth. There's a razor-thin line between showing your worth and looking desperate for validation. Cross that line, and you immediately repel the very people you're trying to impress. Stay on the right side, and you create magnetic attraction without saying a word about how great you are. The difference comes down to one thing: whether you're seeking approval or simply being yourself. Most people get this backwards. They think proving their value means listing their accomplishments, name-dropping their connections, or constantly highlighting their achievements. They interrupt conversations to mention their promotion. They work their college degree into unrelated discussions. They casually reference their social media following or their recent vacation to an expensive destination. Every interaction becomes a performance designed to convince others of their worth. Stop overselling yourself. Instead, let your actions speak. Help a colleague without boasting. When someone feels like you're trying to convince them of something, their brain automatically looks for reasons to resist your message. The harder you try to prove your value, the more skeptical they become. Your obvious attempts to impress actually decrease their opinion of you instead of improving it. Desperation has a distinct energy that people can sense immediately. It shows up in your body language, your tone of voice, and your conversation patterns. Desperate people talk too much about themselves. They agree too quickly with others' opinions. They laugh too hard at mediocre jokes. They offer help or favors without being asked. They share personal information too early in relationships. These behaviors signal that you need something from the other person, which creates an imbalance that makes them uncomfortable. The psychology behind why desperation repels others connects to basic human survival instincts. Throughout evolution, needy people represented potential drains on resources. Someone who constantly needs validation, approval, or assistance could become a burden rather than an asset to the group. Your brain still carries these ancient programs. When you encounter someone who seems needy or desperate, you instinctively want to create distance to protect your own resources and energy. Subtle value demonstration works because it allows others to discover your worth naturally rather than having it forced on them. Instead of telling someone about your expertise, you ask thoughtful questions that reveal your knowledge. Instead of mentioning your recent achievements, you focus the conversation on their interests and experiences. Instead of trying to impress them with stories about yourself, you listen carefully and respond with insights that show your understanding. The concept of quiet confidence explains why some people naturally attract others without seeming to try. Quiet confidence means you know your worth without needing others to validate it. You're comfortable with who you are, what you've accomplished, and where you're headed. This comfort shows up as relaxed body language, steady eye contact, and genuine interest in other people. You don't need to prove anything because you're secure in your own value. People with quiet confidence speak less about themselves and more about topics that interest everyone. They ask better questions because they're genuinely curious rather than looking for opportunities to share their own experiences. They listen more carefully because they're not planning what impressive thing to say next. They take up appropriate space in conversations without dominating or shrinking. They seem at ease in social situations because they're not performing for anyone's approval. Independence tends to spark curiosity and respect. Most people are insecure to some degree. They're worried about what others think of them. They're trying to manage their image and control others' perceptions. When they encounter someone who seems genuinely comfortable in their own skin, it creates curiosity and often attraction. They want to figure out what makes you different. They wonder why you don't seem to need their approval like everyone else does. Showcasing achievements and growth naturally within conversations requires patience and strategic timing. You wait for relevant moments rather than forcing opportunities. When someone mentions struggling with a challenge you've overcome, you might share your experience without emphasizing your success. When the conversation naturally turns to a topic where you have expertise, you contribute valuable insights without positioning yourself as the expert. When someone asks about your background or interests, you answer honestly without overselling your accomplishments. Aurelius said your worth comes from your own deeds, not applause. This philosophy frees you from the need to constantly prove yourself to others. You pursue excellence because it aligns with your values, not because you want external rewards or recognition. Internal validation means your self-worth doesn't fluctuate based on others' responses to you. You know your strengths and weaknesses. You understand your values and priorities. You recognize your growth and progress. This internal foundation gives you stability that external validation can never provide. When someone doesn't appreciate your value, it doesn't shake your confidence because your confidence doesn't depend on their opinion. Actions demonstrate value more powerfully than words ever could. Your work quality speaks louder than your claims about your abilities. Your consistency in relationships shows your character better than your promises about loyalty. Your response to challenges reveals your resilience more clearly than your stories about past difficulties. Your treatment of others demonstrates your values more effectively than your statements about what you believe. People notice when your actions align with your words over time. They see how you handle pressure, how you treat people who can't help you, how you respond to both success and setbacks. These observations create lasting impressions that no amount of self-promotion could achieve. Your reputation builds through consistent behavior rather than marketing campaigns about yourself. The right people will appreciate authentic value demonstration because they're looking for genuine connections rather than impressive facades. They want to know the real you, including your strengths and your struggles. They're attracted to honesty and vulnerability more than perfection and achievement. When you demonstrate value authentically, you attract people who will value you for who you actually are rather than who you're pretending to be. But sometimes, even authentic demonstration isn't enough. Sometimes the most powerful response to rejection requires you to say absolutely nothing at all. The strategic silence method. Silence draws more attention than any argument. When someone rejects you, your mouth wants to explain, defend, or convince them they're wrong. Your fingers itch to send that text message or email that will somehow change their mind. But what if the absence of your words carries more weight than any response you could craft? What if silence becomes your strongest statement? Most people fear silence because it feels like giving up or admitting defeat. They think staying quiet means accepting the rejection without fighting back. But strategic silence isn't surrender. It's strength. It's choosing not to waste your energy on someone who's already made their decision. It's recognizing that some battles are won by not fighting them at all. Here's what happens when you don't respond to rejection the way people expect. Their brain starts working overtime. They anticipated your reaction, your attempt to change their mind, your emotional response. When none of that comes, they experience cognitive dissonance. The silence creates a vacuum where your expected response should be. This vacuum draws their attention, and often their curiosity about why you're not behaving as predicted. Silence creates psychological discomfort because humans are wired for reciprocal communication. When someone expects a response and doesn't get one, they experience incomplete social interaction. This incompleteness generates tension that most people feel compelled to resolve. They start wondering what you're thinking, how you're feeling, whether they hurt you, or if you simply don't care. This mental activity keeps you present in their thoughts, even though you're physically absent from the conversation. The power dynamic shifts completely when you choose silence over explanation. Before, they held the power because they made the decision to reject you. Now you hold the power because you're controlling the flow of communication. They're wondering about your response while you're moving forward with your life. They're thinking about you while you're not thinking about them. This reversal happens because silence cannot be argued with, negotiated with, or manipulated. Punitive silence punishes. Strategic silence protects your dignity. Punitive silence comes from anger, hurt, or a desire to make the other person suffer. You're withholding communication to punish them for rejecting you. This type of silence carries resentment and often shows up in your body language, facial expressions, and energy when you're around them. It's emotional and reactive. Strategic non-engagement comes from wisdom and self-preservation. You're choosing not to engage because you recognize that further communication won't serve your best interests. You're not trying to punish anyone. You're simply redirecting your energy toward more productive activities and relationships. This silence carries peace rather than resentment. The space that silence creates allows the other person to reconsider their position without feeling pressured or defensive. When you argue with someone's rejection, they often dig deeper into their decision to prove they were right. When you plead or try to convince them, they become more certain of their choice because your desperation confirms their doubts. When you stay silent, they have room to think without defending themselves against your counterarguments. This mental space often leads to second thoughts. They might remember positive interactions you shared. They might notice qualities they overlooked before. They might realize their rejection was based on temporary circumstances rather than fundamental incompatibility. But these realizations can only happen when they're not busy defending their decision against your attempts to change it. The internal work required to maintain silence without resentment involves accepting the rejection as information rather than taking it personally. Someone's decision to reject you tells you about their priorities, preferences, or current situation. It doesn't define your worth or potential. When you truly accept this truth, silence becomes easy because you're not fighting against reality. You're simply acknowledging it and moving forward. This acceptance requires releasing your attachment to specific outcomes. You can't control whether someone wants to be in your life, hire you for a job, or pursue a relationship with you. You can only control your response to their decision. Choosing silence demonstrates that you understand this fundamental truth about personal power and responsibility. Silence demonstrates emotional maturity because it shows you can handle disappointment without becoming reactive or destructive. Mature people don't need to have the last word or prove their point in every situation. They can absorb rejection without lashing out or breaking down. They understand that not every situation requires their input or response. This emotional regulation is attractive to others and builds respect over time. Self-control becomes visible through your ability to stay quiet when everything inside you wants to speak. This restraint shows strength of character that most people lack. In a world where everyone feels compelled to share their thoughts and feelings immediately, someone who can choose silence stands out. This discipline signals that you're not driven by impulse or emotion, which makes you more trustworthy and reliable in others' eyes. As Aurelius taught, silence guards your inner peace when words would fuel conflict. He understood that words often reveal more weakness than strength. When you feel compelled to defend yourself, explain your worth, or convince someone of your value, you're operating from insecurity. When you can remain silent in the face of rejection, you're operating from confidence. True power comes from within, not from others' validation or approval. Knowing when to use silence and when to speak up requires wisdom and situational awareness. Use silence when someone has clearly communicated their decision, and further discussion won't change anything. Use silence when your emotions are running high and you might say something you'll regret later. Use silence when the other person is trying to provoke a reaction from you. Use silence when speaking would only damage your dignity or position. The outcome of strategic silence often surprises people who've never used it before. The person who rejected you frequently breaks the silence first. They send a follow-up message, ask mutual friends about you, or find excuses to interact with you again. This happens because your silence created curiosity and uncertainty in their mind. They want to know how you're handling their rejection and whether you're okay. This curiosity gives you significant advantage in future interactions because now they're seeking your attention instead of you seeking theirs. But silence is just one response to rejection. Sometimes the most powerful answer isn't what you don't say, but what you choose to build instead. Excellence as revenge. The most powerful response to being underestimated isn't anger or argument. It's achievement. When someone dismisses your potential, writes you off, or tells you that you're not good enough, they hand you something more valuable than their approval. They give you clarity about exactly what you need to prove and the motivation to prove it. Use rejection as a signal to invest in your own priorities and growth. That person who rejected your job application just showed you which skills to develop. The romantic interest who said you weren't their type just highlighted areas where you could improve yourself. The colleague who dismissed your ideas just revealed the gap between your current abilities and where you want to be. Your achievements are your answer, not angry words. There's something uniquely motivating about being counted out. When someone bets against your potential, every success you create afterward becomes evidence that their judgment was wrong. Every milestone you reach becomes proof that they missed an opportunity. Every achievement becomes a reminder of what they could have been part of, but chose to reject instead. But here's where most people go wrong with rejection-motivated success. They make it about the other person instead of about themselves. They work hard to prove someone else wrong, rather than to prove themselves right. They achieve goals to rub it in someone's face rather than to improve their own life. They chase external validation from the very people who rejected them instead of building internal satisfaction from their own growth. What's your why? Is it for them or for you? When your motivation comes entirely from external sources, your success depends on other people's opinions. You become addicted to proving yourself to people whose judgment shouldn't matter in the first place. You achieve things you don't actually want just to show someone they were wrong about you. You sacrifice your authentic goals for the satisfaction of making others eat their words. Internal motivation for growth produces lasting fulfillment because it aligns with your actual values and desires. You pursue excellence because it makes you feel capable and proud of yourself. You develop skills because they interest you and serve your long-term vision. You take on challenges because they help you become the person you want to be. The fact that your success might prove doubters wrong becomes a bonus rather than the primary goal. Channeling rejection into fuel for personal and professional development requires transforming the emotional energy of disappointment into focused action. When someone rejects your business proposal, you use that frustration to research better approaches and develop stronger presentations. When a romantic interest says you're not attractive enough, you channel that hurt into improving your health, style, and confidence. When a colleague dismisses your capabilities, you redirect that anger into skill development and performance improvement. The key is specificity. General anger at being rejected doesn't create useful momentum. Specific plans for improvement do. If someone rejected you for lacking experience, you create a detailed plan for gaining that experience. If they said you weren't qualified, you identify exactly which qualifications you need and pursue them systematically. If they implied you weren't good enough, you define what good enough means and work toward that standard. Pursuing excellence for yourself, rather than for others' validation, changes everything about your relationship with success. When your achievements serve your own vision for your life, they create genuine satisfaction. When they're designed to prove other people wrong, they often feel hollow even when you reach them. The difference shows up in your motivation levels, your persistence through challenges, and your ability to enjoy your accomplishments. Self-directed excellence also protects you from the validation trap. When you achieve something to prove a point to someone else, you need their acknowledgement for the achievement to feel complete. If they don't notice or don't care about your success, you feel cheated of the satisfaction you expected. When you achieve something for your own growth and fulfillment, their opinion becomes irrelevant to your satisfaction. Transforming rejection into specific improvement goals starts with honest self-assessment. What legitimate weaknesses did their rejection reveal? What skills could you develop that would make you more capable or attractive? What aspects of your presentation, appearance, or approach could use refinement? The goal isn't to become someone else to please them. It's to become a better version of yourself that serves your own interests. Marcus Aurelius taught that obstacles become the path when you use them as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. He understood that every challenge contains the seeds of growth if you approach it with the right mindset. When someone rejects you, they're presenting you with information about areas where you could improve. When they dismiss your capabilities, they're showing you skills you could develop. When they underestimate your potential, they're giving you a chance to prove them wrong while becoming stronger in the process. The Stoic approach to using obstacles as stepping stones involves accepting the reality of the situation while choosing how to respond to it. You cannot control someone's decision to reject you, but you can control what you do with that rejection. You cannot force someone to recognize your worth, but you can increase your actual worth through dedicated effort and improvement. Excellence naturally shifts others' perceptions without requiring direct confrontation or communication. When you become genuinely more skilled, capable, or successful, people notice. Your improved performance speaks for itself. Your increased confidence shows in your interactions. Your enhanced capabilities become obvious through your results. You don't need to announce your growth or point out how wrong they were about you. Your excellence becomes self-evident. This natural shift in perception often leads to changed treatment from the people who originally rejected you. They start seeing you differently because you actually are different. They begin treating you with more respect because you've earned it through your achievements. They sometimes even reach out to apologize or to reconnect because they recognize they misjudged your potential. But individual excellence only tells part of the story. The people around you also shape how others see your worth, and that social context can be just as powerful as your personal achievements. Social proof reconstruction. When you surround yourself with people who value you, those who rejected you will see your worth through others' eyes. This shift in social context changes everything about how they perceive your desirability and potential. The same person who dismissed you last month might suddenly show interest when they see you succeeding with new colleagues, building friendships with people they respect, or getting attention from others in your shared social circles. Think about how this works in real life. A potential employer who passed on your application might reconsider when they hear about your success at another company. A romantic interest who wasn't interested might become curious when they see you dating someone they find attractive. A friend who treated you poorly might change their behavior when they notice other people competing for your time and attention. The rejection itself didn't change, but the social evidence around you shifted their perception completely. Social proof operates on a fundamental principle of human psychology. People use others' behavior as shortcuts for making decisions about value and desirability. When they see that other people want to be around you, hire you, date you, or collaborate with you, it signals that you must have something valuable to offer. This mental shortcut saves them the effort of evaluating your worth independently. They let the crowd do the thinking for them. This mechanism works even when people know about it intellectually. You might understand that popularity doesn't equal worth, but your emotional brain still responds to social signals. When you see someone surrounded by admirers, your automatic reaction is to wonder what makes them so appealing. When you encounter someone who seems isolated or rejected, you might unconsciously assume there's a reason others are avoiding them. Expanding your social circle becomes your most powerful tool for rebuilding your social standing after rejection. Every new connection you make adds evidence that you're someone worth knowing. Every invitation you receive demonstrates that people want to spend time with you. Every collaboration opportunity shows that others value your contributions. This accumulated social evidence creates a new narrative about your desirability and worth. Join a group that aligns with your passion. Natural connections will rebuild your reputation. Professional organizations connect you with colleagues who appreciate your expertise. Hobby groups introduce you to people who enjoy the same activities you do. Volunteer organizations attract individuals who share your values and want to make a positive impact. Educational classes or workshops bring together people who are committed to growth and learning. Each of these environments provides opportunities to demonstrate your positive qualities in fresh contexts. The people you meet don't carry preconceptions about you from past interactions. They form their opinions based on how you show up in the present moment. This clean slate allows you to build relationships from a position of strength rather than trying to overcome negative first impressions. Creating new positive associations requires consistency and authenticity in your interactions. You can't fake genuine interest in others or manufacture chemistry in relationships. But you can show up consistently, contribute meaningfully to conversations, offer help when appropriate, and demonstrate reliability through your actions. These behaviors naturally attract people who value those qualities in their relationships. Your existing relationships become valuable assets for demonstrating your worth to those who rejected you. When mutual friends speak positively about you, it carries more weight than anything you could say about yourself. When colleagues praise your work to others in your industry, it builds your professional reputation. Share your achievements modestly through word of mouth rather than self-promotion. Their authentic enthusiasm for your friendship or collaboration creates social proof that influences how others perceive you. The difference between authentic relationship building and manipulation comes down to your intentions and methods. Authentic relationship building focuses on creating genuine connections based on mutual interest, respect, and shared values. You invest in relationships because you value the people themselves, not because of what they can do for your reputation. You offer support, friendship, and collaboration because you care about their well-being and success. Manipulation involves using relationships strategically to influence others' perceptions of you. You might pretend to care about someone to gain access to their social circle. You could exaggerate your friendship with influential people to impress others. You might share selective information about your relationships to create false impressions about your social status. These approaches typically backfire because people can sense inauthentic behavior over time. Increased social activity naturally creates curiosity from previous rejectors because it changes the story they told themselves about you. When they rejected you, they might have assumed you lacked social skills, weren't interesting enough, or didn't have much to offer. Seeing you engaged with multiple people, invited to events, and valued by others challenges those assumptions. They start wondering what they might have missed or misjudged about you. This curiosity often leads to renewed interest or attempts to reconnect. The person who wasn't interested in dating you might reach out when they see you in a relationship with someone attractive. The employer who passed on your application might contact you when they hear about your success elsewhere. The friend who treated you poorly might make more effort when they notice other people competing for your attention. Marcus Aurelius taught that we should focus our energy on relationships with people who appreciate and reciprocate our investment. The Stoic principle suggests that trying to win over people who don't value you wastes precious time and emotional resources. Instead, you should cultivate connections with those who recognize your worth and contribute positively to your life. This philosophy guides your approach to social proof reconstruction. You don't build new relationships to impress the people who rejected you. You build them because connecting with like-minded, appreciative people improves your life quality. You don't expand your social circle to make others jealous. You do it because diverse relationships provide support, opportunities, and fulfillment that enhance your personal growth. Strong social proof makes rejection less painful because it provides perspective on the rejecter's opinion. When multiple people value your friendship, one person's dismissal feels less significant. When colleagues respect your professional contributions, one employer's rejection doesn't define your career prospects. When you have a supportive social network, individual rejections become minor setbacks rather than devastating blows to your self-worth. But there's something even more powerful than surrounding yourself with people who appreciate you. Sometimes the most magnetic response to rejection requires you to care less about counterintuitive about human nature. When you stop chasing, people start wondering what you saw in them. This contradiction goes against everything we're taught about relationships and social interaction. We think showing enthusiasm and interest draws people closer. But human psychology works in reverse. The moment you stop caring whether someone likes you, they often start caring whether you like them. This backwards reality confuses people because it challenges our basic assumptions about human connection. We assume that interest creates interest, that enthusiasm generates enthusiasm, that showing someone we value them makes them value us back. But these assumptions ignore the fundamental role that scarcity plays in human desire. Scarcity makes attention valuable. Indifference can spark pursuit. Your brain treats attention and approval like any other resource. When someone gives you unlimited access to their time, energy, and validation, you take it for granted. When someone becomes selective with their attention, that attention becomes more valuable. This isn't conscious manipulation. It's automatic psychological programming that affects everyone regardless of their awareness of the process. Professional environments demonstrate this principle clearly. The employee who volunteers for every project and stays late every night might work harder than everyone else. But they often get less respect and fewer promotions than colleagues who set boundaries and maintain some distance. The person who's always available for meetings gets taken for granted. The person who's selective about their commitments gets their time treated as more valuable. Personal relationships follow the same pattern. The friend who drops everything whenever you call doesn't get the same appreciation as the friend who has their own life and makes time for you when their schedule allows. The romantic partner who's always available and constantly seeking reassurance often gets less attention than the partner who maintains their independence and doesn't need constant validation. Don't fake it. True indifference comes from genuine self-respect. Healthy indifference means you're not emotionally dependent on someone's response to you. You can interact normally and maintain kindness, but their opinion doesn't control your mood or self-worth. You care about people without needing them to care about you in return. Harmful dismissiveness means you become cold, rude, or deliberately unkind to create distance. You ignore people to punish them or make them feel bad. You withdraw your warmth and consideration as a manipulation tactic. This approach often backfires because people can sense the hostility behind your behavior. They don't see attractive indifference. They see someone who's bitter and playing games. Genuine indifference comes from internal fulfillment and emotional security. You have enough going on in your life that you don't need any particular person's attention or approval to feel complete. You enjoy people's company when it's available, but you don't feel empty or anxious when it's not. This authentic indifference shows up as calm confidence and natural self-possession that others find magnetic. Performed indifference is an act designed to manipulate others into wanting you more. You pretend not to care while secretly hoping they'll notice your disinterest and chase after you. You calculate your responses to create the appearance of being busy or unavailable. You monitor their reactions to see if your fake indifference is working. People can usually sense this performance because it lacks the genuine ease of authentic indifference. The internal work required to reach authentic indifference toward rejection involves developing a strong sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation. This means knowing your values, recognizing your strengths, and accepting your weaknesses without needing others to approve of your conclusions. It means building a life that feels fulfilling whether or not specific people are part of it. This internal development takes time and conscious effort. You need to identify the sources of your need for approval and work to address them. You might need to heal old wounds that make rejection feel threatening. You might need to develop new interests and relationships that provide fulfillment independent of any particular person's opinion. You might need to practice self-compassion so you can maintain emotional stability even when others don't treat you well. Practical examples of how indifference shifts relationship dynamics show up across all areas of life. When you stop trying to impress a colleague who dismissed your ideas, they often start paying more attention to your contributions. When you stop pursuing a romantic interest who seemed lukewarm, they frequently begin reaching out to you. When you stop overcompensating for a friend's lack of effort, they usually start putting more effort into the friendship. These shifts happen because your indifference changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. Before, you were the one seeking their approval or attention. Now they're wondering why you're not seeking it anymore. Your behavior creates uncertainty and curiosity where there was previously predictability and perhaps boredom. They start questioning their assumptions about your interest level and their own desirability. Marcus Aurelius understood emotional independence as one of the highest forms of personal development. The Stoic philosopher taught that true freedom comes from not needing anything external to maintain your inner peace and self-respect. When you can remain centered and content regardless of how others treat you, you become truly powerful because nothing outside yourself can control your emotional state. This emotional independence becomes attractive to others because it signals strength and self-sufficiency. People are drawn to those who seem complete on their own, rather than those who seem to need constant validation or support. Independence suggests that spending time with you is a choice rather than a necessity, which makes that time feel more valuable and special. Cultivating genuine indifference, while maintaining kindness, requires balancing detachment with compassion. You can care about people's well-being without needing their approval. You can treat others with respect and consideration without being emotionally dependent on their response. You can be helpful and supportive without expecting gratitude or recognition in return. The paradox resolves when you realize that true indifference comes from being genuinely fulfilled rather than from trying to appear uninterested. When your life feels complete and satisfying on its own terms, you naturally become less needy and more selective about where you invest your time and energy. This authentic fulfillment creates a magnetic quality that draws others toward you because they want to be part of something that feels abundant and joyful rather than desperate and empty. But indifference alone isn't always enough. Sometimes you need to communicate your limits clearly without appearing defensive or creating unnecessary conflict. Graceful boundary setting. The art of protecting yourself without appearing defensive requires understanding the difference between two types of boundaries. Punitive boundaries come from anger and focus on making the other person suffer consequences for their behavior. You set limits to punish them for rejecting you or treating you poorly. This approach creates conflict because people sense the hostility behind your actions. They don't see reasonable self-protection. They see someone who's bitter and trying to get revenge through passive-aggressive control tactics. Protective boundaries come from self-respect and focus on preserving your well-being and peace of mind. You establish limits because you value yourself enough to require decent treatment. When someone rejects you and then tries to maintain casual contact on their terms, you might say something like, "I need some space to process this situation," rather than agreeing to a friendship that serves their comfort more than yours. When a colleague dismisses your contributions, but later asks for your help on their projects, you can politely decline without explanation rather than accommodating their selective interest in your value. These boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about creating conditions that support your emotional health and self-worth. As Aurelius said, protect your peace by setting clear limits. The Stoic philosopher understood that allowing others to violate your boundaries meant giving them control over your emotional state. This wisdom applies directly to handling rejection with grace. You don't need to explain extensively why you're creating distance from someone who rejected you. You don't need to justify your decision to limit contact or change the dynamic of your interactions. You simply implement the boundaries that serve your best interests and maintain them consistently. In high-functioning people, clear professional boundaries improve respect and well-being. Research shows that individuals who maintain appropriate limits at work experience less stress, better relationships with colleagues, and more career advancement opportunities. The same principle applies to personal relationships after rejection. When you establish clear boundaries about what kind of contact you'll accept from someone who rejected you, they often develop greater respect for your character and emotional maturity. Your response to boundary testing determines whether your limits become respected or ignored. People naturally push against limits to find out where the real boundaries lie. When someone who rejected you tries to maintain the same level of casual interaction they had before, they're testing whether you'll enforce the new dynamic you've established. Your calm, consistent response during this testing phase establishes your credibility and seriousness about your limits. The language you choose when setting boundaries matters because it determines whether people hear your position as reasonable or aggressive. Instead of saying, "You rejected me, so now you can't have my friendship," you might say, "I need to focus my energy on relationships that feel balanced and mutual." Instead of, "You can't just use me when it's convenient," you could say, "I'm not available for casual hangouts right now." This approach focuses on your needs rather than their failures, which makes your boundaries easier to accept and respect. Behavioral communication of boundaries involves your actions matching your words. If you say you need space from someone who rejected you, you need to actually maintain that space consistently. If you state that you're not interested in casual friendship after they declined romantic involvement, you need to decline their invitations to hang out as friends. Your behavior teaches people how to treat you more powerfully than any conversation ever could. Well-set boundaries transform rejection into respect because they show emotional maturity and self-knowledge that most people lack. When someone rejects you and you respond with clear, calm limits rather than desperate attempts to change their mind, they often develop newfound appreciation for your character and strength. This shift in their perception sometimes leads to renewed interest, but more importantly, it preserves your dignity and self-worth regardless of their response. The respect you earn through boundary setting often surprises people who expected negative reactions. The colleague who initially resisted your professional limits frequently begins treating you as a more capable and serious professional. The friend who tested your personal boundaries usually develops deeper respect for your judgment and character. The romantic interest who pushed against your standards often becomes more invested in earning your approval, though by then you might have moved on to better opportunities. Boundaries demonstrate self-respect because they show you value yourself enough to require decent treatment. When you accept poor behavior without consequences, you communicate that your comfort and dignity aren't important. When you consistently enforce reasonable limits, you signal that you consider yourself worthy of respect and consideration. This self-respect becomes attractive to others who recognize your value and want to be part of your life on terms that honor your worth. The transformation from accommodation to self-advocacy changes how people perceive and treat you across every area of your life. Instead of being someone who accepts whatever treatment others offer, you become someone whose time and attention have value. Instead of being the person who always adjusts to others' comfort levels, you become someone who maintains standards that reflect your self-worth. This shift creates a foundation of respect that influences all your future interactions, including some surprising developments with people from your past. The comeback effect. When someone who previously dismissed you suddenly reappears in your life, it creates one of the most revealing moments in human psychology. The same person who rejected you 6 months ago suddenly shows up in your messages, asking how you've been. The colleague who passed you over for a promotion reaches out about a new opportunity. The romantic interest who said they weren't ready for a relationship appears at your social events, asking mutual friends about your dating life. This isn't coincidence. It's the comeback effect, and it reveals something profound about human psychology and the nature of rejection itself. Consider what happens when a job application gets rejected initially, but reconsidered months later. The hiring manager who passed on your resume might have been dealing with budget constraints that got resolved. They watch your LinkedIn updates, showing career growth at another company. They notice colleagues praising your work in industry forums. Your calm progress becomes a silent invitation for them to rethink their choice. 6 months later, They reach out with a better position and higher salary than the original role they denied you. The comeback happens because rejection rarely reflects your actual worth or potential. Most rejections stem from timing, circumstances, or the other person's internal state at that specific moment. The employer who rejected your application might have been overwhelmed with candidates or uncertain about their needs. The romantic interest who wasn't interested might have been processing a recent breakup or focused on personal challenges. The friend who became distant might have been dealing with life stresses that have since improved. What triggers someone to reconsider their initial rejection involves several factors working together. Time creates distance from whatever influenced their original decision. The emotions, pressures, or circumstances that made them say no have changed or resolved. They've had time to observe your response to their rejection. If you handled it with grace and moved forward with your life, they gained respect for your character and emotional maturity. Your behavior after rejection becomes a form of extended interview. They watch how you handle disappointment, whether you become bitter or vindictive, and how you treat them despite their decision. This observation period often reveals qualities they didn't notice initially. Your professionalism, emotional stability, and ability to maintain dignity under pressure become visible in ways they weren't before. When someone rejects you, they assume you'll remain available and interested indefinitely. But when they see you moving forward, succeeding, or connecting with others, you become less available. This shift from abundant to scarce often triggers renewed interest. The person who took your availability for granted suddenly realizes they might have lost their chance. Timing plays the most crucial role in changed perspectives and circumstances. People's lives, priorities, and capacity for relationships constantly evolve. The person who rejected you for a job might now have the budget and need for your skills. The romantic interest who wasn't ready might have worked through their personal issues. The friend who became distant might have resolved the problems that made them withdraw. These timing changes can completely alter their perspective on what you offer. Your response to their return becomes the most critical factor in determining future relationship dynamics. This moment tests everything you've learned about self-respect, boundaries, and emotional intelligence. How you handle their comeback reveals whether you've genuinely grown from the rejection or whether you've been waiting for this opportunity to prove your worth to them. The temptation to punish them for their initial rejection runs strong. Part of you wants them to feel the sting of dismissal they gave you. You might consider being cold, making them wait for responses, or making them work extra hard to earn your attention. This vengeful approach usually backfires because it creates negative energy that poisons any potential for genuine connection. The opposite temptation involves immediately accepting them back with open arms. Your ego feels validated by their return, and you want to capitalize on their renewed interest before they change their mind again. This approach often recreates the same dynamic that led to initial rejection because you're operating from the same needy, validation-seeking mindset. Handling comebacks with wisdom and self-respect requires evaluating whether you still want their attention or approval. This evaluation must be honest and thorough. Has your life improved without them? Do you still find them interesting and compatible? Are they offering something valuable that you actually want? The answers to these questions should guide your response rather than the simple fact that they've returned. Sometimes the comeback reveals that you've outgrown the person or situation. You might realize that the job you wanted doesn't align with your current career goals. The romantic interest who rejected you might no longer seem attractive compared to the growth you've experienced. The friend who became distant might not fit into the healthier social circle you've built. Their return becomes information rather than opportunity. Stoics view obstacles as opportunities. Your comeback is their sign of missed insight. This approach involves releasing resentment while maintaining wisdom about patterns and character. You can treat someone with kindness and respect without trusting them at the same level as before. You can engage with them without becoming emotionally dependent on their continued interest. Decision-making frameworks for comeback situations start with honest self-assessment. Ask yourself what you want from this person now versus what you wanted when they first rejected you. Consider whether your interest comes from genuine desire for connection or from the validation of winning them back. Evaluate whether engaging with them serves your current goals and values. The comeback effect ultimately proves that rejection often says more about timing and circumstances than your actual worth. When someone returns months or years later, they're essentially admitting that their initial assessment was incomplete or influenced by factors unrelated to your value. Their renewed interest validates that you had something valuable to offer all along. This revelation should change how you interpret future rejections. Instead of taking them as definitive judgments about your worth, you can see them as temporary decisions based on current circumstances. This perspective reduces the emotional impact of rejection and helps you maintain confidence in your abilities and value regardless of others' immediate responses. Understanding this pattern prepares you to see rejection not as an ending, but as one piece of a larger transformation that's been building throughout your journey. The power lies in recognizing what these techniques accomplish when used together. Rejection is a redirection to your best self. Master these core strategies to transform no into your next yes. The mirror effect teaches you to match energy levels. Strategic detachment preserves your emotional resources. Redirection channels your focus toward growth. Value demonstration attracts the right people naturally. Strategic silence creates psychological space. Excellence becomes your ultimate response. Social proof rebuilds your standing. Indifference generates curiosity. Boundaries earn respect. And comebacks reveal the temporary nature of most rejections. The real victory isn't winning someone back who rejected you. True success means becoming someone who doesn't need their validation to feel complete and worthy. If you found these insights helpful, share your experience in the comments or subscribe for more real-world psychology tips.